Monday, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday once again. I want to thank you all for tuning in here on this, the 10th of August, here in 2026. I want to thank you all for making this a part of your Monday afternoon viewing here on all of our platforms. And again, all it takes is 5 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, to like, comment, and share today's episode. It really helps us on the algorithm. It really helps show support for fearless independent journalism, which is what we bring you here on Jersey First TV. And I can't say it enough. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. Click that little bell and you'll be automatically notified of all the great content that we bring you every single week here on the Jersey First Television Network. And whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, make sure you save the channel, make it one of your favorites. And again, whether you're driving to or from Tiki Mondays down in Point Pleasant, whether you're walking your dog, maybe you're helping your kids go school shopping for clothes, for tech, for maybe helping move your kids back to campus in just a couple of weeks, or getting ready for the upcoming academic year in September. Trust me, I'm pretty sure you have your smartphone with you. Take Jersey First and Real Talk with you anywhere at any time. And folks, I can't say it enough. The dream team of independent media here in the state of New Jersey, it's always Jersey First TV, of course, leading the way every Monday. Live, of course, check your local listings for start times. Our brand new episodes of Real Talk with yours truly, Fernando Uribe, and brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap air every Thursday, hosted by my outstanding teammates, Zachary Dora and Tyler Simpson. Folks, again, we're always educating and advocating for the residents here in the great state of New Jersey. That's what we do here on the Jersey First Television Network. That's right, folks. Again, happy Monday to you all. As you can see, I'm still rocking La Furia Roja because it's a Team España summer. As España, la Selección Española, your 2026 FIFA Men's World Cup champions. And again, I'll be rocking La Furia Roja for the rest of the summer here on the Jersey First Television Network, and hope you will be too. Folks, I want to stick around for final thoughts. I have a lot to say about some of the usual bad characters that we have in New Jersey, and folks, there's no shortage. Whether it's in higher education, at Woke State University over there in Montclair with Joe Amatides and the Center for Cooperative Media, you know, the usual Mickey Mouse journalists like Tom Moran, Alan Steinberg, John Van Vliet, Charles Stile, you know, eternal potheads like Matt Freeman over at Political New Jersey, or, you know, Maxi Pizarro over at Insider NJ, or usual sanctimonious, virtue-signaling elected officials, you know. So many people, Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala, or councilmen in Hoboken such as Phil Cohen and Joe Quintero. Folks, you name it, there's no shortage of bad actors in every sector here in the Garden State, whether it's in higher education, whether it's in advocacy, whether it's in government or government work. But especially in journalism, folks, you know, does it ever disappoint to know that Uncle Dave, you know who he is, David Cruz, continues on with his awful brand of journalism, which he calls independent journalism. I mean, folks, who are we kidding here when you watch Uncle Dave? But an interview he just conducted this past week will just remind you again how seething he gets, and how, quite frankly, and I'll give him credit, he'll get Republican elected officials on and some conservatives. But at the end of the day, you could just see he just doesn't like the talking points, or even meet in the middle about something rational or practical. More on Uncle Dave later during Final Thoughts. And of course, folks, also during a special comment, in just a few weeks, ladies and gentlemen, we will be commemorating the 25th anniversary of the terrorist attacks on September 11th by Islamic extremists. And of course, what we've come to see is that many years later, the 9/11 memorial is still gone unfinished. In a time when we're electing, you know, jihadist sympathizers here in New Jersey, for example, in the 12th Congressional District with Dr. Adam Hamaway, or out in the Midwest in Michigan with primary candidate like Dr. Abdul Al-Said. Yes, folks, you would think that 25 years later, hopefully we haven't forgotten. Well, we have. And I'll tell you more about that and why finishing this memorial should be a priority for those in Trenton. As the fact that the budget has gotten bigger than Chris Christie's waistline. Yes, folks, there should be money for this, and there never seems to be that. More on that during a special comment. Folks, here on the program, I say it all the time, yes, 6 years and counting. Happy birthday to Real Talk here as we're continue to be your leaders for fearless independent journalism here in the state of New Jersey. Nobody does it better than Real Talk every Monday night here on the Jersey First Television Network. Now, folks, as you know, obviously not just being an award-winning broadcast journalist, also being an academic, for many years of my adult life, I've worked in our criminal justice system in New Jersey, whether it's the Department of Corrections, the New Jersey Judiciary, with probation, or working for the Office of the Public Defender in Essex County. There's no shortage in terms of my life experience working in our criminal justice system. So unlike other academics or journalists that have never had any real jobs other than what they're doing, see, I've worked in the real world. I've worked in our jails. I've worked with defendants and attorneys representing people. I've worked with those that have been sentenced to probation. And I've worked with probationists of every kind and caliber. So I understand the criminal justice system fairly well. But someone who understands it even better than I do is my guest today. She is the distinguished public defender here in the state of New Jersey. And if I'm not mistaken, she's a fellow Taurus as well. She's my good friend, Jennifer Selletti, joins us live here on Real Talk. Jennifer, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you again, Jennifer. And folks, again, if you're not familiar with the Office of the Public Defender, again, please visit www.nj.gov/defender to understand all the intricacies and the dynamics that the Office of the Public Defender brings to the state of New Jersey every single day. So, Jennifer, good to see you here again. It's been some time. It's been a few years, as they say. But obviously, you continue doing a great job as the New Jersey Public Defender. But for our audience that isn't familiar with the Office of the Public Defender, what were its origins and what drew you to this line of work?
So the New Jersey Office of the Public Defender is actually the oldest statewide public defender system in the country. We were formed in 1967 in the wake of Gideon versus Wainwright, which was a case that said that people were entitled to representation if they were charged with a crime that they could end up in prison for. And so various states, all the states had to set up a public defender system. We chose to do a statewide system, and we were the first state to do that. So fast forward till today, our office represents people charged with crimes in Superior Court, with youth charged with offenses in youth courts, people who are being threatened to be civilly committed because they are a danger to themselves or others in our mental health courts. And also we have an appellate section, a law guardian section that represents children who are involved in abuse and neglect proceedings, and another division that represents parents who are involved in abuse and neglect proceedings. So we actually do a lot more than people think of, and we are working in all 21 counties and 66 offices throughout the state.
And I remember working at the Great Essex County office right on Division Street, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, 31 Clinton Street. That's right.
Clinton Street, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I remember. That's right. Right off of Mulberry, right near Prudential Center. Mm-hmm. And again, I might be dating myself a little bit here, but I remember working at Clinton Street when they were just working and building Prudential Center some time ago. So as a devoted New Jersey Devil fan, I visit Prudential Center often. I'm one of the few Latinos that loves hockey. But my goodness, I remember Prudential Center being built. I remember the TD Bank right off of Clinton Street being built. My God, I'm really dating myself here on that one for sure. Yeah. But Jennifer, again, great stuff that you just described. I think it's important to really outline the work that the public defender is, because again, as we talk about, obviously, the Office of the Attorney General, obviously, and even at the local level, right? We talk about municipal prosecutors, but at the county level, obviously, we have county prosecutors. Mm-hmm. And having worked in Hudson County for some years as a probation officer, I dealt daily with the prosecutor's office in Hudson County at that time. And then obviously, once I transitioned to working for the OPD, working with the attorneys, going to the Essex County Detention Center right off of 15E, right off of Doremus Avenue. That's right. Mm-hmm. Memory's still good. And I remember, driving in there, sitting down with defendants, getting the best summary, obviously. And listen, I always remember I used to dread Mondays. I'm like, oh, especially a holiday weekend. I'm like, oh my God, that Tuesday. I can only imagine. You walk in and obviously you're meeting with defendants. And I never felt nervous, and I always felt like, listen, I'm still doing something very good and productive here, because to your point, Gideon versus Wainwright does serve to remind us that everyone, despite how heinous the crime, despite how horrible human being that you are, you're still entitled to legal counsel. I mean, that's one of the fundamental rights in the Bill of Rights, in the Sixth Amendment, if I'm not mistaken. That's the premise of Gideon, Gideon versus Wainwright. But at the end of the day, people might tend to look at the OPD as like, oh God, there's a bunch of bleeding heart lawyers who are just defending criminals. And I can just say this again, calling balls and strikes fairly, which I do on the show, better than any other journalists in the state. Like, I've seen it up close. I've seen up close having to talk with defendants, having to talk to mothers and fathers, sons and daughters. That, listen, we're adults, Jennifer. Sometimes, you know what? Good people do some really stupid shit. And that's the bottom line. And good people, some really good people, do some very bad things. That's unfortunately the nature of the business, as they say, and humanity. But it still doesn't stop you or the energy you have, as well as the attorneys in the office in all 21 counties, obviously, in all the divisions, not just adult, juvenile. You mentioned surrogate, right? I think there are other child surrogate teams, right? So, what right now do you think is the biggest challenge the agency, besides, funding, which I think every agency can make a claim to that. But you are, again, you have an appointment for a certain amount of time. I know you took over for, if I'm not mistaken, John Krakow, right?
Joe Kokora, yeah.
Joe Kokora, that's right, Joe Kokora. I remember interviewing him during the pandemic and how challenging that was for attorneys at the OPD during the pandemic, when obviously there had to be social distancing and everything else. And, don't get me started on COVID, but the bottom line is, he did a great job. Obviously you transitioned to that position. What went into your thought process? Because at the end of the day, you wanted this job, right? It's not like it just fell in your lap. You wanted to do this. You wanted to elevate yourself to the top position in this agency. What were some of the determining factors in your mind that led you to say, you know what, let me throw my name into the ring. Let me put my name into the hat. I'm as qualified as anybody. I really want this job. What was the epiphany for you about wanting to do this?
I think it was, I spent a long time as a trial lawyer in this agency, and then a long time as the director of training in the agency. And that gave me a unique set of experiences because, one, I was actively trying cases in Essex County. I tried a lot of cases in my time as a line attorney. But also as the director of training, I was traveling around the country. I was bringing in speakers from around the country and learning the way they were doing things in other states. So I kind of wound up with this, wow, there's a lot of things that we're doing in New Jersey that are great. And I was fortunate enough to work alongside Joe Kokora in making many of those things happen. But I got to a point where I said, hey, I'm seeing things. I have different ideas about the way that we can move criminal defense forward in the state of New Jersey, not just in a way that's beneficial to our clients, but in a way that protects public safety as well. And I said, this is, I think, an opportunity for me to now step up and say, we can change the face of public defense. We can change the way criminal legal systems operate, and had some ideas about how to do that. And that's what sort of ushered in the Holistic Defense Initiative that we have been really focused on over the last 2 years.
Now, having said that, though, it makes me start thinking about, again, the agency itself, like every other state agency, it's predicated on funding. And I think it's fair to say, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's fair to say maybe one of the most difficult jobs you may have is obviously maintaining the rapport you need to have with, as they say, the top dogs in Trenton. Obviously, the state Senate President, Nicholas Scutari, the Speaker of the Assembly, Craig Coughlin, other prominent members of the legislature. For example, State Senator Brian Stack, he's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's the governor, right? Whether it's Phil Murphy, now Mikey Sherrill. What would you say are some of, are there a lot of sharks to navigate through these waters, Jennifer, when it comes to, like, again, whether it comes to funding, when it comes to things that your agency needs, but you got to tread a little carefully because you just can't go in there demanding the world. You may not get everything you want. Take us through that process.
So, I am proud to say that our relationship and our work with the legislature, I think, has greatly improved over the last couple of years. When I took over, we didn't have people doing that work. We didn't have a government affairs person. And we've really been focusing on building relationships with people in the legislature, sometimes to advance legislation, sometimes to say this is not a great piece of legislation, sometimes to offer our assistance and guidance in terms of ways that we can fix legislation that we think would not be beneficial for our clients and for the state of New Jersey. So we have been focus on that in many ways. And what I've learned, I guess, over the last couple of years is that we have a lot more in common than we think. I think everybody wants the public to be safe. I think everybody wants to save taxpayer money. Everybody wants to see government run more efficiently. And everybody, maybe not everybody, but most people in their heart don't want to see good people go to prison for longer than they need to and want to see them get the help they deserve. So I have been really focused on kind of starting with those ground truths and saying, what is it that we can do as an agency? Just asking for more lawyers all the time is not the solution, right? It's ways to use the people that we have to do those things that I talked about. And then also looking at ways we can use technology to kind of assist lawyers in managing bigger caseloads. But for me, this whole idea of finding ways that we can keep people from coming back into the system and at the same time make sure the public is safe, that to me is how we change the face of public defense.
Well, Jennifer, you mentioned about using technology, and again, I might be dating myself when I say this, but Sarah Connor and John Connor warned us about the potential of AI decades ago, and they warned us about Skynet, and they warned us about computers, and are you concerned at some point that AI is going to start becoming this instrument or tool at the disposal of agencies like yours, where maybe you're not going to be able to get as many attorneys as you need and have to rely on technology like AI? I mean, is that conversation even being discussed in circles within leadership and management? Because I got to believe that it's concerning all of us in different industries. I mean, why not criminal defense?
So I have to say that our agency, we have embraced what we see as the promise of AI and are working to actively give our attorneys the tools that they can use to help do their jobs better. What I always say about AI is I want to use technology to make our lawyers more human, not less. And if I can automate routine tasks that attorneys do, if I can help them go through discovery faster, if I can help them automate some of the basic tasks, that gives them more time to do the thing that a computer can't replace, which is to sit down with their client and hold space for their client and advise their client. So we are really doing a lot with AI in the agency, both in systems that we built, in systems that we're leveraging that are offered to us by the state of New Jersey, in order to give our attorneys the tools to reduce the mundane tasks that take up a lot of their time and spend their time where it counts, which is in the creativity, the trial prep, the client meetings, and all of that.
Let me ask you this, because again, as you mentioned, the OPD in New Jersey being the oldest public defender agency in the country, but at the end of the day, yes, obviously it's within our Miranda rights, obviously vis-a-vis Miranda versus Arizona. But in New Jersey, I mean, at the end of the day, is there a cost still to a potential defendant and or client when it comes to, the trial, the resolution, whether it's sentencing, whether it's acquittal, whatever? I mean, again, at the end of the day, you get funding from Trenton, but do defendants and or clients, there's still a fee to be paid, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, I mean, it's been some years since I've been in the agency, but is there still some sort of small fee? I mean, again, at the end of the day, you have to be able to collect something, which you have to pay attorneys to pay for supplies, pay for other things, stationary, office space, whatever. Is there still a fee that's still applied to defendant at the end of the day?
No, so there is no fee for public defender services from our office.
Okay.
That was eliminated under the Murphy administration. There was legislation that was fairly, I don't want to say unanimous in passed, but with bipartisan support was passed in the legislature. The difference is municipal court. And a lot of people think that our office represents people in municipal court. When you get a municipal public defender, that is not us. Felonies only. So we are only operating in superior court. So if you have a case in superior court, there is no fee for our services. If you're a municipal court and you have a case, there are still public defender fees associated there, but those are not our lawyers.
Jim, let me ask you this. It's been in the headlines, and I know that because you're dealing with felonies at the superior court level, the attorney in you, I don't want to say the bleeding heart in you, but what I want to say is it's been in the news cycle. There have been a lot of advocates, whether it's elected officials, and whether they're grandstanding or not, I mean, that's up for debate, at least on this show, which I talk about often. But two words have been in the headlines for months now: and that's Delaney Hall. And certainly a little bit of a history lesson for the audience. Obviously, Delaney Hall first started as a rehabilitation and I think clinical facility some time ago in the early 2000s. I believe in 2011, under President Barack Obama, it transitioned into becoming a detention center for illegals, being detained there, obviously awaiting deportation or awaiting deportation hearings. And since then, it's operated under that premise, Jennifer. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And since then, it's been a polarizing topic. Obviously, it's been under different administrations, both Republicans and Democrats in Washington. We've had different presidents oversee DHS and ICE as an agency within the Department of Homeland Security. Delaney Hall has been in the news cycle for some time now. I know that advocates, not necessarily yourself, but those in your field have been very open and loud about the conditions at Delaney Hall. And this isn't a knock on you specifically, but my biggest critique, I think, of the grandstanding that happens about Delaney Hall or other facilities is, hey, do me a favor, folks out there, like, be about prison conditions all around. Don't just be like about Delaney Hall and about what happens to illegals, but be about it about Southern State and what happens in Trenton and what happens to serious offenders. Like, and even, when I worked as a probation officer, I worked and I visited quite often, and maybe it's a facility you're familiar with, the ADTC down in Avenel, the Avenel Diagnostic Treatment Center, which is the state prison for the most heinous of sex offenders in New Jersey. So if you're going to be about prison conditions, be about it completely. Don't just cherry pick when you want to be outraged. What's been your thought? Again, that's a federal level. We're talking about federal representation, federal agents, federal agencies. But as someone that works, in the advocacy field, obviously you're an attorney as well. When you're seeing the outrage about Delaney Hall, what comes to mind to you about the most concerning things?
So to me, it's different as a public defender and as a person who has worked in prisoners' rights. I started my career actually as a prisoners' rights attorney. So if I do hear about abuses in any prison, whether that be the state correctional facilities, where that has the county jails, or whether it be Delaney Hall or federal facilities, that is something I'm going to be concerned about. If I get a complaint from a client who is a client of the New Jersey Office of the Public Defender, I'm going to make sure that that complaint is heard and referred to the right organization who might be able to take that up. But as the public defender, our job is to represent people who are charged with crimes in the state of New Jersey. So if we have people who are charged with a crime and they are sitting in Delaney Hall, we are going to visit them there, we are going to do our work there, and we are going to advocate for them on their case. And when people were arrested for protesting outside Delaney Hall and charged with felonies, we went into court. We filed a motion because we believed that the charges were not, the facts did not meet out those charges. We filed a motion and many of those charges were dropped. But what people have to understand is we do that every day. Every single day we march into court and we say, you cannot prove this case, state. Therefore, we're going to file a motion and we're going to ask you to amend these charges and knock it back to municipal court. The cameras just aren't rolling when we're doing that most of the time. And we would do that work, whether people will charge for standing outside and arguing for better conditions of people at Delaney Hall, or whether they were standing out for something that would be quote unquote maybe a conservative cause or whatever side of the political spectrum you are on. If you are charged with a felony and it is before your pretrial detention date, we represent you. And I don't care who you are, what you believe in, who you voted for. We were going to file the same motion for you that we would file for anybody else. That's what we do. So as the public defender, I stay in my lane and I say, what is our role here? And in Delaney Hall case, our role was to advocate for the people that we by statute represent.
Think about the services that you do. And folks, again, it's 25 past the hour here. If you're just joining us live, it takes 5 seconds. Like, comment, and share today's episode with my guest. She is a distinguished New Jersey public defender, Jennifer Selletti, joins us here on Real Talk. Again, folks, if you're not familiar with the Office of the Public Defender, please visit at www.nj.gov/defender. And looking here, though, Jennifer, I'm looking at the services provided by the Office of the Public Defender. Obviously, Criminal Defense Trial, Office of Law Guardian, Office of Parental Representation, the Appellate Division, Criminal, Office of Law Guardian. And as I scroll down, obviously this is new. Obviously, I do see immigration. And I do see that in the Padilla versus Kentucky case, it's a recent decision for the most part, going back to March of 2010. The primary holding of, look at my notes here, is that defense attorneys must inform non-citizen criminal defendants about the risk of deportation based on a conviction when they are deciding whether to plead guilty. And again, folks, you can look up on LexisNexis, excuse me, Padilla versus Kentucky, 2010. You can read the whole decision. But again, obviously, that's relatively new, though, right, Jennifer? Obviously, that's an additional, that's an additional dynamic about the services provided by the office. You know, and I want to pick your brain about this. Again, it's not something that you have to deal with per se. It's what the budget is determined in Trenton. It's what goes into it. Some people might just say, though, Jennifer, again, obviously, all of the services you're providing are very worthwhile. No one's disputing that on this program. But conservatives like me get a little outraged when I think to myself, damn, my tax dollars are going to a fund, which, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, whether this fund specifically helps attorneys in your office or others that maybe are working pro bono on the case. But nothing aggravates me as a homeowner and a taxpayer when I think that my tax dollars are going towards a legal fund to help illegals fight deportation. And for someone like me and others, Jennifer, that are just like, wait a second, is this what Trent's spending money on? Help me separate fact from fiction here about, whether, obviously the Padilla, Kentucky case, helps facilitate this, whether there is money I know there's money in the budget going towards this, but at least somewhere in the realm of $20 million. But someone like me who's a fiscal conservative just says, really, do my tax dollars have to go fund this? What say you about a counterpoint to that?
So there's a lot in there. And I'll try to do this as quickly as I can. That $20 million is not for Padilla defense. That was a separate fund that has been established under the current budget and I think is being divided up amongst various agencies to do different things. Padilla is a United States Supreme Court case. It is not a New Jersey Supreme Court case. It is not a New Jersey legislative act. It is a United States Supreme Court case that requires us to say to somebody, if they're thinking about pleading guilty, hey, if you plead guilty, you might be deported. Or, hey, if you plead guilty, you might never become a citizen. Or even if you're legally here, if you plead guilty and you leave to go visit your home country, you might not be able to come back, right? Things people should know before they decide to accept a felony conviction. That is something that if we did not do it, what would happen is that person would later file a motion for post-conviction relief. They would win because there's a constitutional obligation by our U.S. Supreme Court, our federal government, to do that. And then the case would be kicked back again and they would get out. It would be undone and we'd have to redo it. So there is no choice but to fund Padilla defense. And that's something you could take up with the U.S. Supreme Court, not with our court. The other thing that I would say to people about what it is that we are doing is it costs $75,000 to put a person in a New Jersey state prison for a year. Using our new holistic defense model, where we connect people to the services that they need to stop becoming part of the cycle of crime, when we connect them right when they're arrested to the services they need, and we're doing this in 3 pilot counties, we have been able, on average, to save 1 to 2 years of state prison for people who participate in the program. That means every time somebody gets the services that keep them on track, keep them from committing new offenses. We have very low reoffense rates for these. Every time we do that, we're saving the taxpayers $150,000 if it's 2 years in state prison and keeping them safe by fixing the problems that brought that person to prison in the first place. If 1% of our clients did that, we would save the taxpayers at something like $5 or $6 million. So I think we need to be smart about the way we look at tax dollars and be smart and say, if there are ways, and look, really, people who commit really heinous crimes, they're going to prison, right? They're going to spend, I'm talking about the people that are on the brink, that maybe if we connect them to services early, get them on the path early rather than 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, if we can divert them from state prison by showing they can remain offense-free on pretrial release and complete programs before they even have to decide whether or not to plead guilty, then we are saving the taxpayers literally millions of dollars a year and keeping the public safe by keeping that person in the community, but on the programs with a demonstrated track record of success. So that's what we've been trying to do, is say that this is investing smartly in public defense is a way that we can save taxpayers a lot of money, keep our communities safe, keep people back and contributing to the communities from which they belong and from which they're going to go back to. So that's what we've been really trying to do here.
That's a great breakdown, Jennifer. Absolutely. Let me ask you this also too, because obviously under the services dynamic here with the public defender, and one that really caught my eye, and it's one that really caught my eye because again, having worked in the criminal justice system, I've seen firsthand the importance of it, and that's expungements. And but just by going by here by the site, obviously, um, the New Jersey Office of the Public Defender Expungement Unit was launched in 2024 by Public Defender Jennifer Selletti and is led by Deputy Public Defender Stephen Hunter. And the reason this sort of stands out for me is having worked for the years that I did, especially as a probation officer in the judiciary, and then working, as a criminal investigator there at the Essex County Office Division. I remember, and again, this is way before, we ever legalized marijuana, for example. And I was someone in grad school at the time who wrote tons of papers in grad school about like, oh my God, why are we still criminalizing marijuana usage, and why are we still jailing people for this? And for someone to listen, I've never smoked weed, I don't care to, I never will. Some people think I should, just to lighten up here on the show, but the bottom line is that I've seen firsthand, whether it's working in higher ed with students of mine, ex-students of mine, that for just because it wasn't 2020 yet, you make the mistake, you get caught with a bag of weed, or you're caught smoking somewhere, you lose your financial aid, you lose the right to vote, you lose your job, you get incarcerated, a whole bunch of different things that could happen. And I look back and say, my goodness, if there was ever a moment to really serve as a genesis to expunge records, and again, it's my show, I can say this, a lot of bullshit charges I think that people have been, levied upon them over the years. I would argue that expungements really, I would say, is probably one of the most important dynamics of the OPD. Take us through not just the creation of the unit, but what have you seen the success rate since then? And what are, again, not divulging names, obviously, attorney-client privilege, but maybe like one or two really good success stories about the importance of expungements and why they've worked.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And it's such a it's an important topic because there's a lot of misconceptions about expungements. I'll see people saying, oh, they're just going to get their record expunged. Like it happens the day after you're done with your sentence. And in New Jersey, it is hard to get an expungement. You need to be offense-free for at least 5 years for some offenses, 10 years for others. The people that we are seeing coming into expungement clinics are mostly people who are working and looking to get a promotion or trying to get an advanced degree or a license to like a nursing license or things like that. So you see people coming in really trying to improve their lives. So when I took over the public defender's office, we did have an expungement unit, but they were pretty much just working for the clients we represent and working in the courts and sitting in the office. And I said, what if we took this expungement unit and took them out into the community where we could start meeting with people and expunging records in the communities in which people work and live? And it has been phenomenally successful. We've been doing expungement fairs around the states. We went from doing about 2,000, 2,400 expungements a year to 8,800 last year. And I want to top 10,000 this year. That's my goal. And I think we will, the track we're on. And that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing people that can't get a job, that can't volunteer at a community organization, that can't coach their kids' team at school because 20, 30, 40 years ago, they had some low-level offense that's still hanging on their record. So by helping people do that, we do a couple of things. Look, most people who have finished a sentence are living in your community or coming back to your community. If somebody gets an expungement, within the first 2 years, their earning potential goes up by about 20%. For people of color, that's about 30%. And also for women, it's about 30% within 2 years. So you're talking about people who then are able to wipe a past mistake off their record and then contribute to their community because they're able to get that job, do that volunteer work, get that professional license, move up in their organization, all the things that we want people to do. So I'm so proud of our expungement efforts and also the fact that this really has been embraced around the state with a lot of support from people from all backgrounds, all political persuasion, all walks of life, really understanding and appreciating the power that giving somebody who has earned it, who has deserved it, by doing all the things that they're supposed to do, by giving them the ability to get that second chance.
Absolutely. And again, I can't say enough, having seen it firsthand, working within the criminal justice system, also working within higher ed. I've had ex-students who've gone through that process and having to wait years for expungement. As you said, it's not instantaneous. I mean, it takes some time. And to your point about, dads and moms maybe looking to get better employment,
And I do remember there was one, you told me to give an example and I forgot, but I remember one guy just recently came in, and this was so powerful because he had just joined a union, just joined, and he was working and doing really well and wanted to get a promotion to a job site that would require a clean background check. And we had to tell him, look, guy, you're not eligible right now. You're not going to be eligible for 9 years, because he would be not eligible. He took out his calendar. He circled that date and he looked at me and he actually grabbed my hand and he said, I don't care that I'm not eligible for 9 years. This means for the next 9 years, I'm not going to get in any trouble. I'm not going to jeopardize anything because I love my union job. I want to move up in my union. And I know that I need to get to that date on the calendar. And every morning I'm going to think about that. And you're going to see me 9 years from now at one of these expungement fairs to the day. And I'm going to get my record expunged, right? So that to me was such a powerful story. There's so many powerful stories about people getting their record expunged and being able to walk out the door. But when we also think about the fact that people who've earned an expungement are less likely than their counterparts to commit another offense in the future, we can see how the prospect of the expungement is going to keep that gentleman and many, many more on the straight and narrow for the next decade, because he wants it so badly and he wants to be able to continue his career.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, because again, going along the lines about expungements, and as I mentioned before, obviously in 2020 via ballot referendum here in New Jersey, we saw marijuana be legalized. Mm-hmm. And in the 6 years since then, obviously we've seen dispensaries popping up all over New Jersey. Some municipalities have chosen not to allow for licensing. I get it. Some municipalities don't want it. Where I live in Hudson County, obviously there's, in Jersey, it's saturated with them. But when you go to North Hudson, not as many, which I think is smarter when it comes from a business perspective. But the bottom line is, we knew that for a lot of years, whether it was advocates in your office, Jennifer, or other like nonprofits, like for example, like the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and others, that for decades were banging the drums about, my God, we have to decriminalize weed. We have to either, legalize it outright, because we're still incarcerating a lot of black and brown people, disproportionate to, let's say, poor white people who were using it at the same rates but weren't being imprisoned for it. Where do you see the next big, I would say, criminal justice reform that's necessary? Because as I mentioned, for decades, it was we need to decriminalize marijuana. Look what it's doing to communities of color. Right now in 2026, moving into 2027 in the future, in your position as the public defender, collaborating with other attorneys, other criminal justice professionals, what do you think is the next big criminal justice reform that has to be addressed in New Jersey?
So, I mean, to me, it's the spread of holistic defense to all 21 counties. Okay. Right now, we have and I realize I'm putting the public defender's office at the center of the next criminal justice reform, and I think we deserve to be. We are the people who meet people right after they get arrested. They're going to tell me things they're not going to tell their mother, their girlfriend, their priest, and certainly not the court or an outside service provider. We can meet with a person and within 48 hours know what it is that they need to be successful. And that means, and put them on that path. So in the 3 counties we're pairing the lawyers with advocates that are working with the client to get them into the programs that they need. And this way, while the lawyer is lawyering, which takes a long time, sometimes 6 months, a year before a case gets resolved in court, after you go through the motions and you do all the stuff that you need to do. That person now has been involved in services for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, however it takes to get to the end of the case. And whether the case is dismissed because our lawyer is successful or the client faces a choice to plead or go to trial, they're in a far better position than they were when they were arrested. And that's not what happens in the other counties. In other counties, they just kind of go along with their lawyer, and we're not connecting them to the services at such an early point. And we have seen service connections multiplying by 400% in the counties that we're working in. We're not seeing the same rates of reoffense. We are seeing people getting housing, job stability, successful drug and mental health treatment programs, and saving, as I said before, at least if there's a threat of state prison and we're able to say, Judge, maybe this person doesn't really need state prison because for 18 months now they've been clean, they've been sober, they've been taking their meds. That will give the judge a little bit more confidence in sentencing them to probation or a county jail sentence. And we're able to save that money and, again, protect public safety.
Jen, let me just ask you this. I mean, and I want you to finish your answer, but when you
Mhm.
said about a 3-county pilot program, what counties were they working in?
So we're working in Hudson, Atlantic, and Monmouth right now.
Okay.
And there was legislation. It was introduced at the end of last session, and it's going to continue in the fall. Legislation to expand the public defender's pilot from 3 counties to 21 counties. And I want to be clear, we're not replacing service providers. I know you mentioned Jim McGreevy before, was a wonderful program, Volunteers of America, Jewish Family Services in Atlantic County. We're working with so many incredible service providers. We're not looking to replace them. We're looking to make sure that the people we serve have a pipeline to those service providers that already exist in the community, including the big ones, like I just mentioned, and the small ones that maybe our client needs specifically because of their specific needs. So we're not looking to be a service provider. There's plenty of people doing that. We are looking to be the people who are referring our clients to the services that they need, presenting that to the courts and to prosecutors to allow them to make better decisions on the case. And it's working. It is working in the 3 counties we represent. And we could save so much money if we institutionalize this program across all 21 counties. But that is going to take legislation because it means we need the positions to be able to hire those advocates to do that work.
Interesting work. Let's see how it pans out. Obviously, if other counties can follow suit based on legislation, as you just alluded to, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I just saw a press release last month. Really caught my eye. If you could just share with us, because maybe our audience isn't familiar, the New Jersey Office of the Public Defender is launching the OPD Resource Library, now built in partnership with researchers from Princeton University, the New Jersey Innovation Authority, and the New Jersey Office of Information Technology. The OPD Resource Library reflects a collaborative effort to responsibly deploy AI to public defense. I'm sure there's more into it. Share with our audience here a little bit about the significance of this new development.
So one of the cool things we have in New Jersey is this Office of Innovation that allows state agencies to consult with them in order to use AI more quickly, more effectively, and more cost efficiently. So really to make government more efficient through the use of AI. And we were one of the very early partners of the Innovation Authority in terms of going to them to say, how can we make public defenders' lives easier using the technology? One of the things that attorneys have to do is write briefs. And we used to keep a folder on our server that had sample old briefs. So if Jen Selletti wrote a brief, it would go in the folder. And if Fernando Uribe was going to write a brief, you could look it up and say, I'm going to steal some parts of Jen's brief. You kind of cobble stuff together, like cutting and pasting from different drafts. We call it Franken-briefing because you're taking little bits of different briefs to kind of create your first draft and then really honing and refining it for your particular client and circumstances. And it takes a couple hours to do a Franken brief because you got to hunt through all the folders. You got to make sure the law is good. So we went to the Office of Innovation and said, can you automate that using AI, using only briefs that our appellate section says are good and are good law? So we put all of our briefs into this system, and now lawyers can type in their legal subject, and up comes a list of all the other briefs that have tackled that subject and kind of points them to the different chunks that they can take. So it's not writing the brief for the lawyer. What it's doing is sort of automating that hunt and pack kind of process that used to take hours and letting lawyers do that in 5 seconds, however long it takes the AI to do it. And it was really cool. So we got to work with the Office of Innovation. We got to work with Princeton University. So it was no cost to the taxpayers in our agency in terms of going out and buying something from Google or buying something from somebody else. And really cool because Princeton students were allowed to really develop this system and to think more about how AI adapts to legal reasoning and case hierarchy and all the kind of logical problems that you have to deal with in case briefing. So the students at Princeton won. We won because we got this really cool tool for our clients. And it's great for the Innovation Authority to be able to sort of showcase how we can move the needle in using technology to make attorneys' lives easier. I think the other thing that one other reason I'm very concerned about AI is that as public defenders, we're both a sword and a shield when it comes to everything, right? We're going to go into court armed with using AI to do whatever it is that we can do in court. Ultimately, the attorney is always responsible for anything said and handed into a court, but using AI to make our attorneys more efficient. But on the other side of it, our attorneys have to be really, really good at AI because pretty soon, and even now, prosecutors, police departments are going to start introducing AI-based evidence in court, and we're going to need to challenge it when the science doesn't look good to us. So the more our attorneys are used to using AI and the more tools we're building for our attorney, the more trainings we're doing on that, the better we also will be at being a shield to keep bad technology from coming into our courtrooms.
Again, great stuff coming up in the future, right? Obviously, with the Office of the Public Defender. Speak about the institution itself, Jennifer. Certainly at the top of the food chain, it's you. You are the New Jersey Public Defender. But, you know, I'm a guy that loves team sports, and I'm always about the team. It's always about we, not me. I think it's fair we to take a little bit of time here to really, you know, give some flowers to the rest of the team here. I see some names here. Robin, you have to correct me and excuse me for the pronunciation. Robin Vasey,
Easy,
first assistant public defender. Tracy Telemacue, the assistant public defender. We got Joseph Russo, Fletcher Duddy, Kelly Lerner Sanders, as well as Prescott Loveland, Jennifer Perez, Michelle. Actually, I remember Michelle Kalari. I remember working with her in Essex County. Another assistant public defender, Lynette Rente. Tell us about the team here, because again, it starts with you at the top of the food chain, as I say, the quarterback, but everybody else on the field is just as important here, right?
Yeah, they're more important, right? Like, I am so incredibly blessed with that team that you mentioned, and there's so many more people. I'm glad you named names, because if I'm not going to name them, because if you forgot one, it's your fault, not mine. But there are so many people. We have an agency of 1,300 people. So everything from a secretary who is picking up the phone and talking to a crying mother who's trying to get in touch with their client who's sitting in a county jail, to Robin Veazey, who is my first assistant, who I could not even navigate my life and my professional life without. Everyone in this agency plays such a critical role in representing and advocating for the people that we serve. But yes, my management team, I am absolutely blessed. Some of these people I've worked with for years. Some of these folks have come in from other states even, and from other agencies and from other walks of life to join this management team. And it's such a wonderful collaborative place. And it's just really an honor as a person in charge of an agency to be able to sit into a room and not go there with preconceived notions, or maybe even go with a preconceived notion of what I want to do, but have such smart people who aren't afraid to tell me what they think, to really bounce things around. And when we make a decision, ultimately I'm responsible for everything the agency does, but there's such a collaborative process that goes into it. And I can always feel confident in relying on the expertise of the people that I've surrounded myself with. So yeah, I could not be more blessed to go into work every day and work with all those people and every other 1,299 other people that work in this agency.
Listen, it's a great team. And again, I think I named everybody, so I want to make sure I did that.
You did.
By looking at the site, obviously, and looking at the great things that you're doing. Folks, if you're just tuning in here live, my guest today is the New Jersey Public Defender, the distinguished Jennifer Selletti is our guest here today on Real Talk. Like, comment, and share. It takes 5 seconds to show your support for fearless independent journalism, which is what you get here with Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Jennifer, before I let you go, obviously, it's the summer months, but as they say that you're never taking any time off. Obviously, you have a big job overseeing all 21 counties, all these different divisions. Like anything else, and again, I'll sort of say this in a joking manner. Having dated a good amount of attorneys in my adult life, I can say sometimes they can be difficult. Some of those ladies have been difficult over the years. But when you're dealing with attorneys and different mandates and just different goals and different, in every county, what have been some of the difficult waters that you've had to navigate at the top of the food chain? Again, you're the quarterback, right? You have to sort of oversee the team. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you could sort of, again, outline, again, not giving names per se or cases, that you've had to navigate with the agency where maybe you're not seeing eye to eye with different attorneys in different divisions, and how does that get fixed and mediated?
So I think the biggest challenge of running an organization and even taking over an organization is there's always going to be people there who have been in those roles that predated you, right? And I've been fortunate to be able to appoint a number of people to leadership positions within our agency, but some have worked here for many years and have incredible experience. But sometimes you do get that we've always done it this way. So I think one of the hurdles for anybody taking over an agency is getting around okay, we're going to try something new. There's new ideas coming. And it's not necessarily resistance. It's just we kind of fall into the way things have always been done. And I feel really fortunate because I think I say it's resistance. It's not really resistance because my approach to that is always like, let's try it. And going back and saying, is it better? And if it's not better, then maybe we do go back to the old way. So that has been something I think, in taking over, you have to be very conscious that people have really good ideas. They may not always be your ideas, and making room and making space. I think the other thing is making sure that everybody needs to be at the table is at the table. One of my very dear friends that I've worked with a lot from Salvation and Social Justice, Raquel Romans Henry, I remember once being in a meeting with her, and at the end, she said, let's all stop and just look around the room and say, is there anybody that's not in this room that should be? And to me, that was such a powerful way to end a meeting. And whether I say it in a meeting or I'm thinking it, whenever I meet with people, and particularly when I was new and meeting with many different parts of the agency and different offices, I would always be thinking, is there somebody whose voice we're not hearing here, who we need to give input to help move this initiative forward? And I think one of the things we've really been able to do is create a lot of like cross silo committees or cross, agent unit committees, create new programs, bring lawyers together to work collaboratively in ways that we haven't before. And that's just from kind of meeting that challenge with, okay, you have an idea, then come into the room and tell us what it is.
Jennifer, before I let you go, obviously just a couple more things I just want to pick your brain about. Moving forward for the rest of the year, obviously I do see community events coming up. What can you tell us about what else the Office of the Public Defender will be doing for the rest of 2026? And what are some big things that you can foresee coming in 2027 that you can share with our audience today?
So I think it's two things, and the biggest one being the Holistic Defense Initiative. We have got to get that passed. And I would really encourage anybody out there who's like, oh, no, like she's a public defender. All she wants to do is, she's a bleeding heart, as you said. That was your words, not mine.
Again, to be fair, listen, I'm a conservative, but I can embrace some progressive positions.
Yeah.
I can have I'm a political scientist. I'm an academic. I can have rational conversations. But I think at the end of the day, there is that, unfortunately, there is that painted with a broad brush. And again, having worked in the agency myself, I can speak intelligently and say that's just not true. But again, it's hard to sometimes change public perception when it comes to that. But go on.
But I think that's, so that the perception that somebody might have, like when I say I'm the public defender, right? There's a perception that I'm going to have certain attitudes and beliefs about all sorts of things that some might conform and some might not. But I want to encourage people, particularly your listeners who may be not aligned with what you would expect a public defender to be, to really think about this idea that most people who commit a crime are coming home. They're eventually coming back to the communities. Very few people are spending long, long, long stretches in prison. So if we can give people the tools that they need to be successful and not send them to prison for longer than they need to, and thereby by saving $75,000 a year every time we shave it off, and make sure they're not getting rearrested again, right? It's a win for everybody. It makes government more efficient. It makes us maximize the work that the public defenders are doing. It's a great cost savings. It saves taxpayer dollars. It really does feel like a no-brainer to me. So that is something we're really going to be trying to communicate over the course of the fall as we're looking to move holistic defense. And I would challenge anybody who wants to see the math. The math is there. The other thing that I think we're working on is continuing along this path of saying, how can we optimize technology to save money, to be more efficient, to communicate better with clients, and to allow our attorneys to spend more time doing the things that technology will never do, like spend more time being creative and more time meeting with clients and more time doing the intellectual exercises of preparing for trial. So we will continue, I think, our leadership in AI. And again, that is something that dollars invested are really going to save a lot, because it's going to allow our attorneys to work more efficiently and better balance the caseloads they have. We're not just going with our hand out all the time and saying, give us more lawyers, although we do need more lawyers. And if we identify a place where there's a legitimate cost benefit analysis that says we need lawyers, we're going to ask for them. But looking at ways that we can make government work, make government more efficient, and allow our attorneys to do an even better job. Again, that's all a win-win. That's not, one end of the spectrum or another.
Gemma, let me ask you this, because again, I'm not an attorney, you are, and you can break this down for me. And one of the biggest talking points I always bring up on this program, as well as conservative podcasters do in general, is about public safety and talking about our court system. And very much, again, I would argue this, again, as a political scientist, you can correct me as the attorney, but we've seen what a disaster across the river cash bail has been. And we've seen what a disaster, in my opinion, in New Jersey, cash bail has been. It's not keeping certain people in jail. I think it sort of enables some sort of lawlessness, or maybe coddles criminality coming out of Trenton. What can you share with us today, again, to really simplify it, separating fact from fiction? I would argue cash bail is a horrendous policy in New Jersey and New York. We're seeing the impact of it on our communities. What is something to defend about cash bail, and where when it comes to journalists or political commentators like myself that are consistently denouncing it, where am I wrong here about cash bail? And am I getting too worked up about this, or where can we meet in the middle on it?
Yes, I think you are getting too worked up about it. But I think and I think when you're saying cash bail, you mean bail reform, because we do not have cash bail in New Jersey.
Yes, bail reform.
Yeah. Bail reform. I mean, look, the old way was, if you had the money, you could buy your way out of jail. I could be an axe murdering serial killer, and as long as if the judge set a bail at $10 million, because our old law our old constitution required the judge to set a money bail. So if I was an axe wielding serial killer who had the $10 million bail, I could get out. I could buy my way out of county jail. Now you can't do that, because now courts are allowed to consider whether or not you're dangerous. Literally, before bail reform, we were not allowed to argue that the axe-wielding serial killer was dangerous. We weren't allowed to say the word dangerous. Dangerousness was not a factor in bail. So now courts look at your dangerousness, your likelihood to commit another offense. They balance that, and that's what keeps you in jail. If you are dangerous, you stay in jail. If you are not dangerous, we can let you out with conditions. But the amount of money in your pocket has nothing to do with it. It used to just be, I'm going to put a price on your head, and if you can buy your way out of it. And we would have clients who the bail would be $100,000. You could go to a bail bondsman and put down 1% and walk out of prison the next day. The whole thing was just a farce. So at least now courts are looking at what they should be looking at. Are you dangerous? Are you going to commit another offense? Where I think there is room for improvement, and this is where I'm going to be practical and say things that maybe a public defender shouldn't say. There are some gaps in the system that we need to look at. And we have been very honest with legislators in saying, if you can show me data that there's a particular offense or a particular issue where we're seeing high rates of reinvents on pretrial release, I will work with you to craft narrow legislation that closes that gap. And we have talked to many legislators about that. I think the other thing that people don't think of often is that prosecutors have to move to detain people. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room with a prosecutor complaining, oh, the judge is releasing everybody. Oh, the judge is releasing everybody. And then we look at their rates of asking for detention, and they didn't even ask to detain the person that they're claiming, that they're complaining about. So the system only works when prosecutors do their job and they say detain this person because they're dangerous, and we have a hearing to do that. You can't blame us or blame people like us, the criminal defense lawyers, when the prosecutor's not even asking to detain people. That's their job, and then we can have a hearing and an intelligent discussion about whether or not that's the case.
Jennifer, we've gotten to know Jennifer Selletti, the public defender, the attorney, the advocate, the jurist, as they say. Let's just quick lightning round here about Jennifer Selletti, the girl, the Jersey girl, right? And let's get to know her a little bit here on the show. So quick lightning round. Baseball fan, any team?
I'm not a particular baseball fan, but my dad was a Yankees fan, so if I had to pick a team. Okay.
Are you into the NFL?
No.
Okay. Were you into the World Cup? Like, were you excited about real football?
Who is not excited about real football? I'm not a particular football fan, but I was very excited about the outcome of the World Cup as well.
Okay. And obviously, I think it's fair to say that you were not rooting for Argentina, right? And right,
No, I
okay,
was rooting for Spain. I'm a big fan of Spain. I've been there many times. I love the
sure.
country, and yeah, so I was rooting for them.
Yeah, I mean, my maternal grandfather was born in Spain, so I mean, obviously, I had to rock it. And I mean, what does it say how unlikable Argentina is? That literally Hispanics are rooting for the country that literally colonized you for centuries. How bad do you like, Jennifer? Think about this. How much do people dislike Argentina that you're rooting for colonizers that colonized Latin America over Argentina? Like, it just, I mean, that should just put in perspective how unlikable, the little 5'2" guy was with Argentina, right? I hate to put you on the spot here. Favorite cuisine and restaurant?
So I'm my favorite cuisine. Like, is it cuisine? Is pizza cuisine? Because I would eat any kind of pizza, the fanciest pizza in the
Oh,
world.
wait, it's like Jennifer, pineapple too?
No, I'm not a big fan of the pineapple pizza. But I will eat pizza out of a vending machine or at the fanciest pizzeria. Restaurant that I'm a big fan of right now is a place called La Lupa in Manalapan. Like, you wouldn't guess it, but you go in there, the food is really good. So shout out to La Lupa.
Now, it's funny about pizza. As someone who worked in nightlife for a lot during grad school and still goes out a lot in New York, quite often or in general, a good slice of pizza at 2 in the morning, Jennifer, is like, oh, it's like a godsend. But I get a little bougie where I'm just like, I'm not just into the $1 pizza where it's like a piece of paper and a splash of like tomato sauce and like a little sprinkling of cheese. I get a little picky about it. I'm like, no, wait a second. I don't know. I want good pizza now at 2 in the morning. Depends how impaired I am. It may not make a difference. But the point is that I'm with you. A good slice of pizza goes a long way for sure. Uh, favorite favorite attorney that you have looked up to in terms of his or her body of work over the years in jurisprudence?
I mean, it's honestly not to bring you down, but my favorite attorney will always be my partner Joe Maserani. He passed away last year, and but I used to love talking to him about cases, and he was such a tremendous advocate in the courtroom, and some of the things that we would talk about and the things that I've seen him do in court, I've never seen anybody else do. So I got to give it to him.
Okay. A lot of my former students watch my show religiously and are still very devoted. Best reason to become a lawyer and maybe the worst reason to become a lawyer?
I think the best reason to become a lawyer, at least in a public defender, is I think we are the only lawyers that are sit down with people who are accused of doing some of the worst things imaginable. We don't pick them; they don't pick us. It is our job to build trust, and it's our job to find a connection with whoever is sitting across from us. And I'm really proud to say that I don't think I've ever not been able to do that. And that's really unique. And I think it's one of the things that's the most special about being a public defender. And I think the worst thing about being a lawyer is anything that you've got to do is not spending your time in client or trying cases, right? There's like mundane tasks that you just have to do as a lawyer that can get monotonous and time consuming and take your nights and weekends and chunks of your life. So the hectic pace of it can sometimes be a challenge, but that's why I think everybody needs to have hobbies. They say you always need a third thing. You need you need your career, you need your family, and you always have to have one third thing. Mine is I operate a shipwreck dive boat. I look for shipwrecks in the North Atlantic. That's what I do as my hobby. And when I get on the boat and I go offshore, it's like I can disconnect from everything else. So
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. I did not know that. Wow. Okay. Good to learn that about Jennifer Selletti. So again, folks, please visit www.nj.gov/defender for more information about the Office of the Public Defender and obviously all the services they provide to New Jersey residents and certainly all the different agencies and the great team that works with our guest today. She is Jennifer Selletti, the New Jersey Public Defender. You see, Jennifer, you survived with a conservative. It's not the end of the world. You see, you're all right.
no, I always love talking to you.
You're good, right? All right. No,
Yeah.
but in all seriousness, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for, again, taking the opportunity to speak with us and really shed light on all the good work that the Office of the Public Defender does. And again, I can say this because, again, I can call balls and strikes fairly. Even as a conservative podcaster and commentator, I understand the importance of criminal justice reform. I understand the importance of our criminal justice system because I worked in it. So I've seen it firsthand. So again, shout out to you. Keep up the good work. Obviously, shout out to the rest of your team. and everybody there at all 21 counties. Obviously, still some people at 31 Clinton Street that I think are still there. I don't want to drop any names. Maybe I will later, but I really want to thank you for your time. Keep up the good work. And once again, thank you for believing in my brand of fearless independent journalism. And we'll see you soon here on Real
Thank
Talk,
you.
New Jersey First TV. Take care, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Folks, good stuff there with the New Jersey Public Defender, Jennifer Selletti. And again, if you're just joining us here, takes a few seconds, like, comment, and share. And shows your support on the algorithm, of course, which is very important. Of course, more importantly, shows your support for fearless independent journalism, which is what we get here on Jersey First TV. Of course, on Thursdays with Bridging the Gap, and of course, live every Monday night with Real Talk with Fernando Uribe here on Jersey First TV. And again, just as a special context here, and I just got to say, I'm really, so privileged to be doing this 6 years in county and talking to the most interesting people in New Jersey, not just in government, not just in advocacy and journalism, but in public service. And we see someone like Jennifer Selletti as the New Jersey Public Defender. And I can say this because having worked in the agency many years ago, I was privileged to work with a lot of great people. And I'm sorry, I'm going to drop some names here because they were really, really good people to work with. Investigators like Frank Morales, okay, Frank Riley, Paul Ibsen, who I think is retired now. Okay, some great clerical staff there, some great attorneys. Some I had just alluded to in the leadership positions at the Office of the Public Defender. And it was great work there at Clinton Street. Also going to Doremus Avenue, working at the detention center, working with the attorneys, getting them ready for CJP court. Wow, I mean, my memory's still pretty good. And collaborating with other investigators when it came time to working on cases, reading through some discovery, helping the attorneys better formulate an idea about who the client is, right? The defendant, as they were being prepped for trial, as they were awaiting trial, motions being filed. Again, folks, a lot of this is still fresh in my mind. Again, I have a really, really good memory. Don't let the pretty face fool you. Again, there's a brain up here. But I look back on those days quite vividly, and honestly, quite enjoyable. With a lot of good people I worked with. It was a great building, a great staff, and just being able to coordinate with all the professionals there, I think was one of the more fulfilling aspects of my professional life. And I've delved into different professions, folks, working in our criminal justice system, transitioning into academia, working in higher education, working in journalism, working in education. Folks, I've been blessed to have worked in very different industries and work with a lot of great people, especially at the Office of the Public Defender. Sure, I had some colleagues I couldn't care for, like Bruce Murphy, Barry Jacobson, and some others. Yeah, I don't miss those guys at all. Or Abraham Drake, that's for sure. Don't miss those guys whatsoever. Or fellow investigators like Reggie Birch or DeWitt Fleming, not exactly the highest opinions. There's always bad apples and everything, folks, but I can tell you that one of the most fulfilling jobs I ever had was working at the Office of the Public Defender. As a criminal investigator there, working with the attorneys. And sure, listen, it was great. It was in Newark. During my days at grad school at Rutgers University in Newark at the graduate school, it was great to be there. And then after going to work, going to classes, and it was great. It worked out perfectly, as they say, in one's life trajectory. So I'm forever grateful. But I'm always grateful about the good people I've worked with. And I named a few tonight. And I wish I could remember a few more names. Actually, Myra Ruiz, I remember, was another investigator. Some other clerical staff that I got to work with there. They're great professionals, great humans. Walking in Monday morning after grabbing coffee down the block. Whether it was in adult or the juvenile division over in Essex. Going up and down the floor on Clinton Street at 31 Clinton Street and being able to converse with a lot of different professionals. And for someone like me who like took the LSATs years and years ago, because like anybody else, you want to see you want to dip your toe in the water and see if maybe doing that is for you. And I scored well on my LSATs. I was grateful for that. Ended up going to grad school instead, getting multiple graduate degrees, and I'm super happy ever since. But I can tell you, working at 31 Clinton Street, it was an extremely fulfilling experience because I worked with a lot of great people, a lot of attorneys that were there. I remember Christina Kersey, fellow Rutgers alumnus, someone that stood out for me, who I know was no longer working there, but a great attorney to interact with. I think Michelle Kalari, I mentioned, who is an assistant public defender, great attorney to work with and interact with. Other pool attorneys over the years while working there were great. It was a great experience, folks. So if you're looking to work within our criminal justice system and participate in public service, not sure what the hiring practices are now, whether they are hiring or not, but if it is a profession that interests you, again, visit www.nj.gov/defender. And if there are job opportunities there, and if you're just looking to dip your toe once again into the waters of working in our criminal justice system, hey, why not start with the Office of the Public Defender? Once again, I want to thank Jennifer Selletti, the New Jersey Public Defender, for her time today and a really illuminating and informative episode here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Folks, that's right. I always say it all the time. 6 years and counting here, raising hell, having great conversations, getting real traffic, and providing you with the best opinion journalism out there. It's not even close, folks. It's not even debatable. It's always here. Real Talk on Jersey First TV. Folks, as you know, it's always time for final thoughts. And I say it, folks, I say it often on this program. There's no shortage of bad actors here in New Jersey, and I say it all the time, whether it's in academia, whether it's beta males and soy boys like Joe Amaditis over at Woke State University over at Montclair, or overpaid, apple-picking, paper-pushing, do-nothing government employees like Maria Rodriguez, also at Woke State University at Montclair. Or useless, ineffective journalists like, I don't know, Tom Moran, Alan Steinberg, John Van Vliet, Bob Hennelly, perpetual potheads like Matt Friedman over at Political New Jersey, or, Sleepyhead over there, the Chuckster, Charles Stile, with NorthJersey.com via the Bergen Record. Or grandstanding, sanctimonious elected officials like, Assemblyman Ravi Bala, Assemblywoman Katie Brennan, or useless municipal elected officials like, Uncle Phil Cohen, or Joe Quintero, who I'm sure, yes, Joe, it's happy hour somewhere, so I'm sure you're on it. Okay? Or other useless activists in New Jersey like Lauren Albright at Garden State Equality, or Caleb Burrell in Jersey City, or Patricia Campos Medina, or other useless women like, Jay Lassiter from Insider NJ. But folks, when it comes time to talking about journalism in New Jersey, and I'm not saying I'm the watchdog, I'm not saying that I'm like the standard bearer of New Jersey news or Garden State media. I'm close. There's a reason why I've been coined, why the phrase has been coined upon me, the generational talent in Garden State media. Folks, it's not by accident. It's not by luck. It's not by, just because someone said. No, folks, it's the body of work. I want to think of a guy who's done an enormous disservice to journalism. And for a guy who's been doing journalism longer than I've been alive, yes, folks, it's always reliable. It's Uncle Dave, David Cruz. And this lazy, I want to keep it PG, folks. This lazy bum occasionally will have some guests and have like a different counterpoint than a lot of the garbage he spews that has been spewing for years. So shout out to him for when, folks. Again, I'm in touch with us on the show. I can call balls and strikes fairly. I can give someone credit where it's due, and I'll give Dave credit where it's due. And again, a broken clock is right twice a day, also. But this past week on that little Mickey Mouse show that Uncle Dave hosts, he happened to have New Jersey State Senator Anthony Bucco on talking about the potential for voter fraud and what's been in the headlines about non-citizens and in many cases the illegals being registered to vote in New Jersey. Now, for someone like Uncle Dave, David Cruz has been fine coddling illegals and the organizations that coddle them and that advocate for them. He's happy to have, clowns like Amy Torres from the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, or Nadia Morsi from Make the Road New Jersey, or Patricia Campos Medina, right? Esa Campesina, and others that just love to grandstand about illegals. And whether it's elected officials like Anthony Bucco or other state senators like Michael Testa, assembly people like Paul Kinitra and others who've been raising the alarm bells for years about the dangers and the ineptitude, which we've all known for decades now, about the Division of Motor Vehicles, which will become the Motor Vehicle Commission. Folks, who would have thought in 2019 that when we decided to give illegals driver's licenses in New Jersey, that it wasn't ripe or a potential for disaster? Folks, we called it. But yes, people like Uncle Dave and others in establishment media, other pendejos like Max Pizarro, Matt Friedman, Charles Stile, Tom Moran, Alan Steinberg, Jay Lassiter, Bob Annaly, you name it, folks. The usual atrocious suspects downplayed it and said, that's just conservatives either being racist or xenophobic or bigoted. No, folks, we were right. And like what this show predicates quite often, we're always right on this show. But don't tell it to Uncle Dave. You can see during the interview with State Senator Anthony Bucco, he's seething. It's almost like he's about to have a panic attack. I don't know, maybe he's hungry, his Uber Eats or his Grubhub didn't get to his house yet. I don't know what the anxiety is, but you can see it in his face that he hates to hear common sense talking points when it comes to about the dangers and, quite frankly, the inevitability of what we saw today. The fact that illegals were being registered to vote. And how is that even remotely paramount to voter integrity, to election integrity? Don't say to Uncle Dave he'd rather coddle illegals when he can and give away the store whenever possible. But let's check it out here.
Good to see you, David.
So you are here to say, I told you so, right?
Well, look, David, this is another example of where Republicans, when this policy was implemented.
And by the way, shout out to State Senator Anthony Bucco. He definitely took the high road. I never do. I don't believe in taking the high road ever. When I tell you I'm right, I'm the first one to tell you I told you so. And I'm not shy about it. So shout out to State Senator Bucco for taking the high road. I would not, especially with a clown like Uncle Dave.
Had concerns, and we raised those concerns, and we were told nothing to worry here. Don't be concerned. We've got it all under control. And now we know some 6 years later that exactly what we warned about has come true.
This was the motor voter thing, right?
That's correct.
You became automatically registered to vote when you got a license.
Correct. And look, this was a dumb idea to begin with. To put voter registration in the hands of the Motor Vehicle Commission, Motor Vehicle Agency.
Again,
and
just look at the face of Uncle Dave. I mean, Uncle Dave doing that kind of come mierda anyway. I mean, that's nothing new. That's not news. That's not breaking. I'm not breaking news here. But you can see that when State Senator Bucco said that, you could tell he was just willing to jump out of his seat. Folks, it was a bad idea. Legislators in Trenton decided to listen to the worst of the worst people in the advocacy community. As if we don't coddle illegals enough in New Jersey. Folks, I would argue it's probably one of the worst decisions the legislature has made in the last 20 years. To compound the fact that then Governor Phil Murphy was openly applauding this nonsense, which brings us to where we are today. This was avoidable, but again, it just seems like people like David Cruz and others on the left just can't help themselves, and they salivate to coddle and placate illegals at every turn. Forget about American citizens, no, and homeowners and taxpayers. Olvídate, they don't care about them. All they do is they live to coddle and placate illegals. It's disgusting. But it shouldn't surprise you about Uncle Dave, folks. His journalism has been disgusting for years anyway. Well, let's continue.
Had a history of not being able to get things done efficiently and effectively, was just a dumb idea to begin with. And this
Well,
proves it, you know.
when you say it like that, sorry, go ahead.
And this
Yeah, and again, folks, it's not by accident. He just doesn't like the language, which makes sense. Now, he's normally not used to hearing that, because when you're in Uncle Dave's echo chamber, right, all you do is talk to other useless, like progressives and leftists, like Matt Friedman and Charles Style, right, and others, and advocacy organizations and activists. So this must have been like mind-blowing for Uncle Dave. I mean, not that his intellect requires much blowing to begin with. It doesn't take much to discombobulate his brain. But the bottom line is that, like, this must have been earth-shattering for him to hear, because he doesn't hear these talking points, which make total sense.
proves it, you know. I take issue with the governor's response that this was just a computer glitch. This was obviously not a computer glitch. I mean, folks have confirmed, as far as I know, that when you went in there as a non-citizen, number one, it asked you if you were a non-citizen. You checked the box, right? And then it immediately went to the next question and said, do you want to vote? I mean, who sets
Yeah,
up,
I mean, I
who
haven't,
sets up a computer program like that?
So, but are you suggesting incompetence or malfeasance?
Listen, I think we got to wait till the investigation is complete.
Again, shout out to State Senator Bucco for taking the high road. It is both, David. And the reason you're bringing up those targets is because, you know, in your limited intellect, you know that it is incompetence and malfeasance on behalf of the Motor Vehicle Commission. Those in power in Trenton knew this was going to happen, and they were happily gleeful to let it transpire. And never once did you call it out and say, maybe this is a problem. No, you happily went along with your leftist friends and all your progressive little buddies and said, oh, this is good. This is bringing people out of their shadows, and this is empathy, and this is humane. It's bullshit. But it's bullshit journalism because it's David Cruz. More, let's continue.
And, you know, and I'm a little concerned because I don't think the administration should be investigating itself.
I was going to ask you that. How comfortable you were with, the administration, hiring either whatever outside firm or using, I thought it was originally the governor's lawyer, but I was told that they're hiring an outside firm.
Yeah, and I think when the governor's office controls the investigation, that leads.
Yeah, where have we heard that before? Maybe the COVID response in New Jersey, right? Under Governor Phil Murphy. Yeah, that turned out to be a really legitimate investigation, huh? Folks, this is going to be no different. And I don't want to waste your time with this nonsense from Uncle Dave, but folks, again, it's a reminder that, and listen, I'll give you your flowers, David. You know, a broken clock is right twice a day too, and you happen to have one of the better state legislators in Trenton on your show, as opposed to like the usual left-wing activists that say, or journalists say, oh, there's nothing to be concerned about here. Oh, it's conservatives and Republicans making much to do about nothing. No, folks, it's legitimate. I guarantee you, because you won't hear this from David Cruz. He's too busy stuffing his face with another hot dog probably as we speak. Okay. I guarantee you, if there is any sort of legitimate investigation, I promise you folks, the number we're hearing about is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the amount of illegals, non-citizens, whatever you want to call them, being registered to vote in New Jersey. And how many ended up voting? Well, that remains to be seen. But it's not hysterical. It's not hyperbole. It's something that conservatives like myself and others have been warning about for years. And all you did was prove us right. But again, that will require Uncle Dave to be industrially honest. And again, to practice what's called, and this is a big word for Uncle Dave because he struggles with a lot of words. But one of the biggest words that Uncle Dave struggles with is integrity. And by not having a lot of integrity, it just reminds us when it comes to Uncle Dave and his brand of journalism, well, it's very simple. It's
No. You're a loser. Clown show. Say it with me, Mike. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show.
Let's say it again.
You're a loser. Clown show. Say it with me, Mike. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown. It's a clown show.
Folks, that's what it is. It's a clown show. This could have been easily avoidable had the establishment media done its job and called into question what a bad policy this was 7 years ago. But no, Uncle Dave is happy to placate illegals, coddle activists who placate illegals. But that's been his job. That's been his job for the brand of journalism that Uncle Dave has been doing for as many years as he's been doing it. I mean, longer than I've been alive, folks. And at the tender age of 96, don't expect Uncle Dave to change his brand of garbage journalism anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. It just isn't. And it's a shame. Because in a time when we need reliable journalists, folks, the reality is, Uncle Dave, he just isn't one of them. And he reminds us every single week. Do better, Dave. But then again, will you even bother to? We all know the answer. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment here tonight, and one that really resonates for me. Good opinion piece. Very rarely we don't see that too often on NJ.com via the Star Ledger there. As you can see there, then New Jersey's 9/11 Memorial remains unfinished 14 years after dedication. Let me just read you here by Chris Meek. Pretty good editorial here. And I don't say this too often because, again, at the end of the day, the problem with, Chris Meek is you'll get occasionally a good editorial like this one. And if you're not familiar with Chris Meek, folks, he is the founder and chairman of the 9/11 Legacy Foundation. You can look up more about that great organization offline after the program. But Chris Meek, really here, and again, shout out to him, fellow academic. And he starts off by writing something that really, again, as someone who lives in Hudson County and looks at the skyline of New York City every day, I can just walk a block and I'm there, I'm looking at it. Starts off by saying, as America prepares to mark the 25th observance of the September 11, 2001 attacks, millions will gather at memorials across the country to remember nearly the 3,000 innocent lives lost that day. And again, just a special context there, due to Muslim extremists and jihadists. At the National 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York City, visitors will walk through a completed tribute that honors the victims and tells a story of resilience born from tragedy. In Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the Flight 93 National Memorial stands as a testament to the courage of ordinary Americans who became heroes. Yet in New Jersey, home to nearly 800 of the victims murdered by Islamic extremists, Muslim jihadists, on September 11th, our official memorial remains unfinished. That should shame every elected official who has held office over the last 14 years. The Empty Sky Memorial in Liberty State Park was dedicated on September 10th, 2011. It was meant to fulfill a promise made to the families of New Jersey's victims. Again, instead, according to reporting by NJ.com, NJ Spotlight News, Common Edge, and New Jersey 101.5, the memorial still lacks key elements of its original design. The stainless steel exterior envisioned by its designers was never completed. Parts of the sites have deteriorated. Tragically, folks. I mean, this is ridiculous. Visitor amenities have fallen into disrepair, and the memorial that stands today is not the memorial the families approved. The politicians who stood proudly at the dedication ceremony in 2011 spoke eloquently about remembrance and sacrifice. They praised the families, honored the victims, and promised New Jersey would never forget. Then they left. The families remained. The designers remained. The unfinished memorial remained. Year after year, and administration after administration, the work went undone. And shame on Governors Christie and Murphy for not addressing this, in my opinion. The failure is especially glaring when compared with the nation's other major September 11 memorials. New York completed its memorial. Shanksville completed its memorial. Both faced significant challenges, but both were completed because honoring the victims came first. Why should New Jersey's victims be treated any differently? And asked to accept an unfinished tribute nearly a quarter of a century after the attacks. Again, folks, you can read the rest of the great op-ed by Chris Meek on NJ.com. Again, you can learn more about the 9/11 Legacy Foundation overseen by Chris Meek. Folks, it's disgraceful as we approach the 25th anniversary. And also, too, folks, let's also remember that we're living in a time where we are electing jihadists to public office. We see it across the river in New York City, where families are openly campaigning against New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani attending the 9/11 memorial. Knowing him, he'll probably want to honor the hijackers and maybe have a roll call of names next to the victims, knowing Zohran Mamdani. But as we approach 25 years after the attacks by Islamic jihadists and Muslim extremists, we haven't learned a thing. We're embracing apologists for 9/11. In many cases, we're electing those who apologize for jihadists responsible for 9/11, for those who coddle anti-Semitism. We see it here in New Jersey in the 11th Congressional District with the election of Ana Lilia Mejia to represent the 11th Congressional District in the House of Representatives. We've seen the election during the Democrat Party primary in the 12th Congressional District with Dr. Adam Hamaway, who has ties to terrorists going back to the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, who has open and radical jihadists like Linda Sarsour attending his watch party on election night in June. Radical people like Linda Sarsour who are openly wanting to globalize the Intifada. And people in attendance at the watch party in June for Adam Hamaway, screaming Allah Akbar. Folks, that doesn't concern you as we approach 25 years after the terrorist attacks of 9/11? Or just this week, out in the Midwest in the state of Michigan, Michigan voters went to the Democrat Party primary and elected not just an apologist for 9/11, but openly campaigns with defenders of the 9/11 attacks, such as left-wing podcasters such as Hassan Piker. But in Michigan, the Democrat Party has elected Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed to be its nominee in the upcoming U.S. Senate race in the state of Michigan. And others that identify as democratic socialists who vilify Israel and vilify Jewish people and embrace Islam, which, folks, as we all know, is not compatible with us here in the West, where Islamic cultural norms and values and practices do not mesh well with the West. They just don't. And I'm a Catholic, and I can say this. And for someone that gets mad about how much Catholicism is vilified, and listen, folks, I'm not the most dedicated Catholic, but I'm a Catholic at heart. And there are a lot of things wrong with the Catholic Church, but I can tell you right now, I would much rather embrace Catholic and Christian values in this country than anything Islamic. We've seen the dangers and the poison that is Islamic societies and theocracies in parts of the world that embrace Islam. We've seen it. Don't take my word for it. Folks, you have Google. You can look it up. You have YouTube. You can look it up. Don't take my word for it. The evidence is there. But as we approach the 9/11 observance in 25 years later, clearly for many, especially for those in the Democrat Party at the national level, many haven't learned a thing. To where now they're openly embracing jihadists to elected office. What's happened to us, folks? What has happened to our country? What's happened to our norms and values in our society where we're openly embracing jihadists to elected office, to seeing the impact that radical jihadist organizations like CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and the money that they pour into campaigns and elections, and what they're trying to do in our school districts in New Jersey and trying to help implement curriculum that's catered and shaped by CARE. Folks, that should scare the shit out of you. And for parents out there in school districts that you're seeing CARE slowly but surely knocking on the door, folks, you should keep that door shut. But that's where we're at 25 years later. We have forgotten. And it's a shame. It's a shame for governors from different parties not allocating enough money in the budget to make sure that 9/11 memorial at Liberty State Park gets finished, to honor the families, to give them some sort of closure, because they're still hurting 25 years later. Trenton needs to do better. So shout out to Chris Meek, great editorial. And every so often you'll get one at NJ.com. More times than not, you'll get bullshit ones like Patty Campos Medina last week and others, and other left-wing radicals, because NJ.com loves to embrace left-wing radicalism on a consistent basis. But not this week, and at least thankfully they didn't. With a great op-ed by Chris Meek. I suggest you check it out, folks. It's definitely worth reading. We have forgotten. We should get back to remembering and honoring those families as we approach the 25th anniversary in the observance of the terrorist attacks of September 11th in 2001. We should do better, folks. Trenton needs to do better. And that's my special comment. And that's our show for this week, folks. Once again, I want to thank Jennifer Selletti, the New Jersey Public Defender, for her appearance this week. And again, a great episode, informative, illuminating, insightful, educational. Folks, it's what we do here on this show. Unlike, Mickey Mouse journalists with the little Mickey Mouse podcast and little Mickey Mouse ratings and traffic, folks, it's real journalism here because it's real talk. Make sure you like us on Facebook, of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Of course, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. And don't forget to favorite us on Spotify or SoundCloud, whether you're driving to Tiki Monday or driving back from Tiki Monday down Point Pleasant, doing school shopping for your kids as they move back to campus or start the new school year in September. Whatever it is you're doing, folks, I'm pretty sure you have your smartphone with you. Check out Jersey First. Trust me, you'll never be disappointed with the Jersey First Television Network. Always remember, ladies and gentlemen, again, educating, navigating for the residents here in the great state of New Jersey. It's always Jersey First TV, of course. Brand new episodes of Real Talk air every Monday. Check your local listings for start times. And, of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with Zachary Dora and Tyler Simpson premiere every Thursday. Folks, we are the leaders in fearless independent journalism. So we do here on not just Real Talk, but Bridging the Gap via Jersey First TV. Once again, folks, can't say enough about everybody. Great traffic here during the month of July. Again, we'll give you some numbers in a little bit. Obviously, you can check out our social media pages. But, folks, again, without you, my loyal viewing audience, this would not have been possible. So thank you to everybody that makes Real Talk the success that it is, 6 years and counting, here on Jersey First TV. Again, folks, always remember, it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid. It's always Real Talk here on the Jersey First Television Network. That's right, folks. It's me, the generational talent in Garden State Media, and your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Have a great rest of your week. Please party responsibly, and we'll see you next Monday here for the latest edition of Real Talk on the Jersey First Television Network. Thanks for stopping by, and always remember, stay classy, everyone.